The sakura has a special place in Japanese culture. The arrival of the cherry spring blossom has come to symbolize human life, its nobility, its impermanence, and its imperfection. When the trees are in bloom, people gather in large crowds with family and friends to come and see the blossom and enjoy festivals with food, drink, and music. One of the largest collections of flowering cherry trees outside of Japan can be found 6,750 miles east of Tokyo in Washington, D.C. Each year, over 700,000 people come to Washington to see the cherry trees and to enjoy the blossom, which traditionally marks the beginning of spring in the nation's capital. It was 1885 when the idea for first planting Japanese cherry trees was raised with the head of public buildings and grounds in Washington. The idea was rejected not once, not twice, but every year for 24 years by each park inspector that held the role. A breakthrough came in 1912 when 3,020 Japanese cherry trees were sent from Japan as a gift of friendship to be planted in West Potomac Park. The story of the cherry trees is the story of an idea I've chosen to call next level leadership. It's not the dry stuff you read about in the business press, and it's not limited to the boardrooms of a few organizations at the top of the organization. It's something that we can all do. Let me explain. Never have we wanted real leadership more, yet seem to want the leaders we have less. But when we outsource leadership to other people, it seems that most often we lose trust in them. And we get to exempt ourselves from their failures. How's this so? Well, it's not that we're short of leadership theories. In the last 100 years, we've developed lots of leadership theories, but I'm sure you would agree that reading about leadership doesn't really make a leader, does it? And it's not that we don't invest in leadership development programs. We do. In the US alone, estimates range somewhere between $30 and $50 billion a year. Whether that's internal intensives for high potentials, whether it's sending leaders to external executive programs, or hiring in personal coaches for people moving into key roles at the top of the organization. The Creative Leadership Center identified that 40% of leaders fail within 18 months of being named and identified and placed in their position. We mythologize leadership from the military and from the world of sport. And yet it's important to remember that whilst there are lots of things that we can learn from those arenas, the objective in those finite contexts is to win at all costs. And it seems, as yesterday showed, in the wider world and its rhythm of life, that we can no longer afford to win everything at all costs. The evidence for this is Earth Overshoot Day. This is the day when humanity's demand exceeds what Earth can regenerate in that year. In 2019, that was July the 29th. So just think about that for a moment. That means right now, here in September, we are already using next year's resources. Yet we seem comfortable with this state of affairs The mood of fear and anger in our organizations, institutions, and media seems to suggest that we've chosen to choose that these problems are not our problems, are not our struggle, and are not our burden. We're so used to leadership being defined as a heroic another arriving in the nick of time to save the day with cape held aloft. And not forgetting, of course, the all-important underwear worn on the outside with audacity and vigor. We confuse leadership competencies, the doing of leadership, with leadership qualities, the being of leadership. And we insist that our leaders must become well-rounded, instead of encouraging them to amplify their passion, their purpose, and their presence. The doing of leadership is everywhere. It is unglorious, it is headline-free, and it is mundane, and it is something we all do each and every day. It's making breakfast for the kids. It's going to work on a day when the last thing you want to do on that day is go to work. It's holding a door open. It's calling someone to check that they're all right. It's 101 simple activities. We overestimate the ordinariness of leadership, whilst at the same time underestimating the daily rituals and practices needed to cultivate the invisible inequalities of next-level leadership. These qualities emerge quietly, gradually, and unannounced, much like the virtuosity of a musician in the middle of a concert performance. So instead of wanting leaders to be someone else, I want you to consider that the what next of leadership starts with ourselves. A return to self. Next level leadership begins with a profound understanding and acceptance of who we are. Not just a knowing who we are, but a real felt sense of who we are. It's a lifetime's journey to what Dr. Dan Siegel defines as integration, where integration is the entry ticket to creating meaningful, compassionate relationships with ourselves and with others. Warren Bennis said, becoming a leader is the same as becoming yourself. It's precisely that simple, and it's precisely that difficult. Next level leadership is underpinned by 3 principles. The first is encapsulated in a phrase borrowed by President John F. Kennedy in 1963. In commissioning the Greers Ferry Dam in Arkansas, he said, if the economy of Arkansas prospers, then the US economy prospers. And if the economy of Arkansas weakens, then the US economy weakens. He famously said, a rising tide lifts all boats. And as it is with economics, so it is with people. Our willingness to become a rising tide means that all boats can and will be lifted eventually, irrespective of where they start from. The second principle is to raise the bar and help everyone over it. There's an assumption that in learning soft skills of leadership, that somehow our standards have to drop. Sometimes we have to lower our sights. Well, I say poppycock. The truth is, it's very different. The opposite is true. Not to do it for the other person, but to be the example. To create a supportive and safe environment. To have patience. To offer encouragement and celebrate success when it arrives. The performance culture of next level leadership comes from my Aikido practice, both on and off the mat. Aikido is the only martial art that doesn't involve fighting. The purpose of Aikido is to take an attacker's energy and use it to restore harmony to the world with love. Quite difficult if someone's coming at you with a knife. You learn with your training partner that receiving a technique is a better thing than delivering a technique, because it teaches you far more about Aikido, and most importantly, it teaches you about yourself. So both training partners have a responsibility to help each other succeed. And as in Aikido, so it is in next level leadership. The third principle is to focus on accomplishment rather than achievement. The hunger for success is impatient, anxious, and clamorous, whereas the urge for meaningful accomplishment is steady, circumspect, and takes its time. Let me explain. If you climbed Everest, that's an amazing achievement that very few people achieve in their lives. Actually, that's not what I mean by accomplishment. If you won a gold medal at the Olympics, that is an astonishing achievement, born out of a lifetime's dedication and hard work. But it's not accomplishment. And if you rode the Atlantic single-handed, that's an awesome achievement, pun intended, requiring self-discipline, strength, and courage. But it's not an achievement, not yet. Accomplishment harnesses achievement in service of others. Accomplishment uses achievement to show others that there is greatness and potential within them. And accomplishment uses achievement to give others permission to play big, to express themselves freely, and to find their flow. The original idea of planting cherry trees in West Potomac Park came from a multi-talented visionary who defied the gender expectations of her day. Eliza Sidmore was an American journalist. She was a world traveler. She was a photographer. She was an author. She was a lecturer. She was an animal expert and a plant enthusiast. Quite amazing. And despite being rejected every year for 25 years, she continued with her campaign to see her vision come to a conclusion. On March the 27th, 1912, First Lady Helen Taft planted the first 2 cherry trees in West Potomac Park. And Eliza was there to see her dream brought to life. Eliza chose something bigger than herself. She did something that impacted lots of people, millions of people. And she built something that lived on after she passed. Eliza was an amazing woman. She blazed a trail. She was the first female director of National Geographic. And for me, Eliza embodies this idea of next level leadership. In Washington today, people come when the trees are in bloom. They not only come to see the blossom and to enjoy the festivals, but they come to be reminded of life's nobility, its impermanence, and its imperfection. So I encourage you, and I challenge you. How will you take your relationship with yourself to the next level? How will you take each of these 3 principles and make them your own? And most importantly, what will you now accomplish in the world today? Thank you.